Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's episode is brought to you by In the Reads. In the Reads provides beautifully bookish, affordable artwork that brings to life the vibrant worlds within your favorite books, TV, and film. Pick up their signature woodmark with colorful, detailed designs that won't damage the pages of your book, or maybe get a map drawn in the Tolkien style. Maps from fantasy series like Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, and Game of Thrones, or maps of real-life locations including nearly all of the United States or other countries that are available. Use code TALES10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. Visit their site at inthereads.com or check out their social media on Instagram. A link will be in the show notes along with the special code to use at checkout. And now let's get to the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today, I'm joined by a special guest that I have stumbled across on the Twitterverse, and I am joined with Josh, but you might know them on Twitch or Twitter as Anorian. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you. I know that we've been like mutual followers for a while, following each other on Twitter back and forth, and it's nice to get to talk to you. I've been watching you on Twitch do your video game stuff, and then reading a lot of the stuff that you post on Twitter. So it's nice to get to talk not face to face, but virtually face to face.
No, same. And I appreciate it. And it's just the nice thing of like, I love Twitch streaming. I do. And getting to talk to so many people live while I'm making content, as opposed to like, there's nothing wrong with YouTube, but as opposed to the whole situation of like making a video and then people are commenting well after the fact and all that. But it's nice to just have like a conversation with a human. Just one-on-one. It's really good.
It's something that, especially when COVID started in 2020, is a lot different. Where there's a lot more people that were like, I don't have anything to do. Of course, yes, I'll get on a podcast and talk to somebody.
Right.
Now, one of the things that you're really big into, as far as like fandoms go, is a subsection, a genre of video games that is like tactical role-playing games or strategy role-playing games like Suikoden and Fire Emblem. I know you just finished, what is it? Triangle Strategy?
Yes.
And I guess my first question is, how did you get into those style of games? Like, what was the draw for you when you first got exposed to them?
Right. So just for not that I'm, being like, now how dare you say it, but just for clarity, Suikoden isn't a tactical RPG. It's like a turn-based JRPG, something along the lines of like a Final Fantasy or something like that.
Yeah.
But Fire Emblem, so the first game that I played where it was like, oh, okay, I'm moving units around on the map and things. So what's this all about? Is Shining Force on the Sega Genesis. Okay.
I remember those days.
Right. And I was like, okay, I like this. And it was like, I'm sitting here and it's like chess with RPG stats. Okay, I'm interested in this. Let's keep going. And it really always got to me, and it was the type of game I love. And then Final Fantasy Tactics on the PlayStation 1 is the game that I picked up, and I ended up getting it because I saw it in an ad for it. Not even like a review or something like that, but I saw an ad for it in, I want to say Tips and Tricks, one of the old gaming magazines around back in the day. And I saw the art. I was like, this looks so cool. The way it's hand drawn and everything. I love the way these characters look. Okay. And I popped it in and instantly fell in love. And that was like, I liked Shining Force. Don't misunderstand me. And I still do. Like, I actually went back and replayed it recently because it dropped on the Nintendo Switch Online on the Genesis games you can play there. And it's still a great game. But the game where I went, oh, I love tactical RPGs, like this is a thing for me, was Final Fantasy Tactics. And then the series that took hold of my heart in a very large way, that came further on in high school, which was technically, I didn't even buy the game. Okay, it's Fire Emblem, the first release that came to America on the Game Boy Advance. Okay, and it was actually, later we find out it's the 7th game in the series. Now, I had heard of these games because I'd played Super Smash Brothers Melee, and you got all the trophies and everything. I'm like, who's this Marth cat? And who's this Roy dude? And Roy ended up becoming my main in Melee back in the day. I was like, man, I want to know what this Fire Emblem game is like. And I used to play, pretend with friends. We would play around, whatever, playing back, and I would pretend to be Roy. I would come up with my idea in the head of what the game was like, what have you. And so then the Christmas that Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories came out, this is exactly how I know when it was. That Christmas, I got it as a Christmas gift. And then I played it, beat the whole thing, played the secondary mode with Riku, beat the whole thing. And then a friend of mine, I brought it into school with some of my games, and a friend of mine was like, hey, yo, is that Chain of Memories? I wanted to check that out. Could I, he's like, hey, how about I'll borrow it and you can borrow one of my games. And I was like, okay, cool. What do you got? He's like, I got Fire Emblem. And I was like, oh, damn, I can finally check this game out. And so I'm like, hell yeah, sure. And we traded. I popped it into my GBA and started playing. And I see, I'm like, this map with these little figures. And I'm like, wait, this is a tactics game? Oh my God. But who is this Lynn girl? Which is the refrain of anyone who had played Fire Emblem for the first time. I'm like, where's Marth? This is a girl with green hair. And there's a guy you see on the cover of the box art who's like, I mean, he looks kind of like Roy. He's got red hair and blue armor and a sword. That's got to be Roy. That's just got to be his box art. And so you end up running in and was like, wait, Elliewood? That's not his name. Oh, here's the blue-haired guy in armor. That's got to be Marth. That's not Marth at all. That's Hector. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I end up falling in love with this game. And I end up like really, really getting into it to the point where, this is the early days of the internet, but I start looking up stuff on Fire Emblem and I start seeing these images of all these other games, right? I'm like, wait a second, but I've never heard of these before. And that's when I learned that there was 6 games that came out before the one that ever came to us in America. And so that was the beginning of me, like, I'm well known by a number of people as the Fire Emblem guy. Recently on Twitter, there was a meme floating around like, what would it be to make a blank starter kit? Insert your name here. Like, what would an insert your name here starter kit look like? And I was like, I'm morbidly curious what people think. Literally every single answer included some type of a Fire Emblem reference. Like, there was a dozen answers, and one person was like an axe, a sword, and a lance, and then went on with the rest of their answers. One person just said a copy of every Fire Emblem game. With like all different, but they all reference it in some way. I'm like, okay, I get it. I have a brand. It's fine. I'm okay with that.
What was it when you popped that game in because you've got the basis with Shining Force, which my fondest and most terrible memory about Shining Force is I remember being at a sleepover. We had put hours, we grinded, getting everything, progressing the story, and then I woke up at one point and I was like, oh, you know what? I'll start my own save file. And I overwrote what we had done like the whole evening. And it's like, yep, I remember that. I don't think I've ever went back to play Shining Force after that. I was like, not going to touch it. But with Fire Emblem and pulling it up for the first time and, like the strategy, the tactical, like, what is that draw for you as far as like why do you lean so heavily into like that style of gameplay?
So I guess it basically comes down to there's something about for lack of a better word, the tactical nature of it. More specifically, like the moving around and this, that, or the other. It basically boils down to, with like a JRPG, like with a Final Fantasy game, you got all 5 of your units there. And like the enemy's going to randomly select one of them to hit. And so you've got your tough guys up who are supposed to take hits better. Then you got your squishy mages and all that. And there's but so much you can do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misunderstand me. I love RPGs. I play the hell out of RPGs all the time. But that's just always a thing. And there's something about in tactical RPGs, this idea of I have this whole field of movement available to me. And I have different characters that are able to maneuver it in different ways, different lengths that they can go. Some can move farther, some can move shorter. They have different strengths and weaknesses. And I have to kind of compile all that with the movement and try and essentially outthink my opponent in the same scenario. And by doing it well, you did it well because you're able to present all your strengths up front and shut them down before they can react. All right. So it's like this idea of mages are going to be able to hit an opponent hard, but they're going to be completely destroyed by physical hits. But now I don't have to worry about this idea of like, there's just always a random chance the mage will get hit. I can be the one to decide if that's going to happen by where I place them, by where I engage them within combat. And so it's this idea of like, all the tools are available to me. What matters is just if I use them. But it's not guaranteed even still. But you can heavily tilt it in your favor. I've always just really, really loved that. And while I love Final Fantasy Tactics back in the day for the job system, the thing about the job system is eventually you are just obliterating everything. Mm-hmm. Right? Like eventually you've got your two swords ninjas running around and just killing things in one attack. You've got mages with spells that are obliterating enemies with their weakness before they can react. Whereas with Fire Emblem, there does come that point, but there always feels like some level of chess match to it, where it's like, I'm going to do a lot of great things, but if I make a wrong move here or there, even with me doing very well, this is going to go poorly. A recent example is like, for streaming, I decided to come up with my own challenge, just for the fun of it. I said I was going to do a Fire Emblem Nuzlocke. Okay, and if you're familiar at all with Nuzlocks and Pokemon, for those of you who are listening who aren't, basically it's a challenge run where the idea is Pokemon themselves become a finite resource. So like you start with your starter, and then you can catch one Pokemon in any given area. So like Route 2, Route 3, Viridian Forest in the original Pokemon, for instance. And it's the first one you run into in every area. So, and it doesn't mean like the first one and that species. So like in Route 2, if you run into a Rattata, you can't catch unlimited Rattata. You can catch that Rattata. Mm-hmm. And if you knock it out, you can't catch it at all. And if you catch it, like, okay, you have that one. But then the other rule that makes it finite is if a Pokemon dies, it's dead. Game over. You can't revive them. Go. And it's like, can you survive to the end of the run? So I was like, let me take that in a game that already has permadeath as a thing. And that's one of the other things I liked about Fire Emblem is the permanent death. And it's this idea of like, if I screw up and someone dies, I can't just do a Phoenix down. They're gone. Poof. That's the end of it. So I got to decide, am I going to let them die? Am I going to go back and retry it? A whole bunch of things. Well, I was like, let me kind of mush these together. And I started doing a Fire Emblem Nuzlocke. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get my starter, quote, Pokemon or starter unit, and that'll be my Lord. And I did it in the game. That was the last one that didn't come to America. Funny enough, the one with Roy, my main. And I was like, okay, so I get Roy because he's the Lord. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all the other characters I can get in any given chapter. I'm going to, assign them a random number, 1 through whatever. And then I'm going to use a random number generator on Google. And I even had it live on the screen. Whatever number it gives me, that's the unit I'm allowed to use. I cannot use any of the rest. They can't take hits. They can't buy things. They can't go rescue towns. None of it. They are, for all intents and purposes, they don't exist until I get to the point where like I can just choose not to deploy them. And then they literally can't take the field. And I can get 1 unit per chapter added to my squad. Go. Now, I'm good at Fire Emblem. Like, there are a few, for the most part, I tend to be a very humble guy, to be honest with you. Like, I crack on myself. I'm often making fun of myself or my abilities or this, that, or the other. But there is one thing where I will openly admit, like, no, I know more than almost anyone has forgotten. That's Fire Emblem. And I was doing really good. Somewhere around, I think, chapter 13X. It was like an extra chapter. I think it's 13X or 12X. I forget which it is. No, 12X. Somewhere around 12X, I sent a unit forward. He's solid defensively. He's good, no problems. And he went off into fog where I'm like, okay, but I think there's only one enemy there who can hit him. We should be fine. Oh, enemy that attacked him happens to attack with a weapon that deals automatic tripled damage against mounted units. Boom, dead. One wrong play. And he's gone. And I have to keep going. It's like, even though I'm good, even though I know more than a number of people, I can absolutely still get reminded now and again, I am not infallible. And I like that.
I can't even wrap my head around trying something of that nature in like that style of game where it's like, okay, they're gone, like, and just trucking along like that. That is incredible.
Oh, that death hurt. I'm not gonna lie. But it's just, but here's the thing. And here's the thing about the Fire Emblem fandom. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm gonna soapbox a bit. Because like I said, Fire Emblem is near and dear to my heart. I love it truly. Its growth in the West and it's becoming popular, and Three Houses becoming literally, and this is true, Three Houses became the greatest selling strategy RPG in video game history when it came out. It became the first strategy RPG to sell more than 3 million copies on initial run. That's huge for such a niche market. Like, I love that. I love more people getting into it. I hate gatekeepers. Like, you want to give I don't care if you came in on the newest game or on the first game or on anywhere in between. I'm glad you're here because more people buying it means the series keeps going. Exactly. You know what I mean? It means I get more of the series. Hell, this year I got so hype at the Nintendo Direct because one of the very first things that came out, there's a clip of it on my Twitch channel. I was getting everything prepped, and I look up and I see the way the troops are that come up on the screen. Look, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Fire Emblem based. And like the day before, I was like, they have to do something new with Fire Emblem. But given the success of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, I would not be shocked if they're going to do another Fire Emblem Warriors. Mm-hmm. And that's the reveal we get. And then we're going to get like another proper tactical Fire Emblem further down the line. And the first thing I see is that. And then I see the words Fire Emblem Warriors appear on screen. And I literally just start screaming. Like, I'm just like, let's go! Like, top of my lungs. I'm not going to do that here because I'm going to save y'all who happen to be listening from having to hear that. But here's the thing. I love spin-off games like that too. If your interaction, I know people are like, I love Fire Emblem. I'm like, oh, which of the games have you played? And they're like, well, the thing is, what got me into it was Fire Emblem Heroes, which is the mobile game. I'm like, that's dope. I played the hell out of some Fire Emblem Heroes. What are some of your favorite units? I want to welcome them in. I want them to feel comfortable with it because then they're going to buy Fire Emblem games and then they're going to make more Fire Emblem games, which means I get to play more Fire Emblem games.
Exactly.
It's a very simple system. But the Fire Emblem fandom, now it's not near as toxic as, the Soulsbro community. It's not near as toxic as that, but there is a very large contingent that makes their whole personality, these games all went south once they introduced all the anime waifu and easy mode elements. Wrong. You are dead ass wrong, because from the first game up through the 11th game, I had to do, 8, 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12th game, I had to do the math in my head. 7 of which did not come out in America, which is 1 through 6 did not come out in America. 7 was the first one that came out here. That was the one that was just titled Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance. But it's called Fire Emblem Blazing Blade. 8 was Sacred Stones on the Game Boy Advance. That came. 9 was Path of Radiance, the one with Ike, also from Smash Brothers. That came. 10, a sequel game to 9, Radiant Dawn, also therefore by proxy had Ike. That came, and then 11, which was a remake of the very, very first game that ever came out in the series, Shadow Dragon. That came out as a remake on the DS. 12 did not come out. I can get into the nitty gritty of that, but it's basically a sequel to Shadow Dragon. It's a thing. But the point is, 13 comes out in America. And this was the first one that had a bunch of people going, wait, what was this? And that's Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS. It was by many considered one of the best 3DS games there is. And people went all in for it. And the thing about it that brought a lot of people on board was that it took a number of systems that the series already had, such as being able to do job changes that actually kind of started in the second game, and branching promotion. Well, let me rephrase. They had branching promotion paths in the second game and in the 8th game, where a fighter could promote to either a warrior or a hero, just as a hypothetical. Well, what they said is, okay, well, what if people could change jobs? Cool. Then they took this system that was in the 4th game where, in the 4th game, it's split into 2 halves. The first half is one generation, and then the second half is the next generation, literally their children, and then some supplementary characters. And so if you paired up, you could pair up characters, and there was a set of women who were going to have children. And so depending on which male character you paired them up with, it would affect their child. Their child would inherit things from their dad, like skills or stat bases or things like that, off hair colors, all sorts of stuff. So it gave you a lot of flexibility in replays. So they did that with Awakening. They brought that, which again, we'd never seen in America at least. So it's okay, so we can pair up these characters, then eventually have their kids join us through time warp shenanigans, and their kids have access to classes and stats and all types of stuff based on their parents. So that's neat. But here's the thing that made people actually start playing it. There was already difficulty modes in most Fire Emblem games, okay? Where you could make it harder, and that was always a thing. And so this did have difficulty modes, but it added a separate mode, separate from difficulty, casual or classic. Casual, if your unit dies at the end of battle, they revive, like if you'd used a Phoenix Down. There is no permadeath. Classic, there's still the permadeath like you know it. You can keep it on classic, and it's like the games have never changed. And since they introduced that, in Awakening, they've had it in the games moving forward. And the growth of this series, you can track a direct line from when they introduced that mode to the growth to today. Because now it's not so daunting to play this game. Now you don't have to worry about if I'm in the 17th map of the game, of a 30-something chapter game, and I haven't leveled my people appropriately. One of these people is guaranteed to die against the boss. I'm going to start losing people. They're going to die. I have a finite amount of experience. Oh my God, what am I going to do moving? Well, that's not the thing anymore. If part of your strategy is you have to throw someone at the boss to distract them and take the hits while someone else is attacking, so be it. You can do that. And then at the end of the map, they get back up and you keep it moving. And it helps so much for people to want to play. And so I had to tangent there because it drives me bananas. Like gatekeeping in general drives me bananas. I'm big on every game needs difficulty options amongst accessibility options. Like, it's more than just that. If you try and distill it down to accessibility is just difficulty. No, it's a lot more than that. It's colorblind filters. It's sound design. It's this, that, or the other. But additionally, they all need difficulty options in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't ruin the series. The latest games can still absolutely be tough as nails if you got them on classic on the harder difficulties. It doesn't stop the games from being hard. I love the challenge. I just told you, I went to one of the harder games of the series and said, how can I make it harder? Apparently because I don't like myself. And you know what? I played the new ones too. 3 Houses. If you to give someone who even knows tactics, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, and put it on one of the harder difficulties, I promise you, they're gonna struggle a bit. Now, eventually they may overcome that, but you're going to face some tough enemy opposition. The series is not going down in any way. I promise you. It's healthier than it's ever been because we're going to get that spin-off later this year in June. Well, I guess depending on when this come out, earlier this year in June. I don't know what the exact date of this versus the release. We'll see. We'll figure it out. I don't know. But it's like we're getting that spin-off, and I promise you before the end of the year, at worst, we will be given a rundown of what the next Fire Emblem is. That's like a tactical game, and a release date that's either this year, like by holiday season, or it's going to be a release date for next year. Like, this has grown from this niche thing that just kind of comes out in Japan every now and again to this niche thing that a couple people in America have played because they found that guy in Super Smash Brothers, so whatever, to this not quite very niche thing. It's still niche, but it's growing to, oh no, this is a game a lot of people have known and heard of and played. And that's great because the series has not lost its soul, but now we're getting more of it. So, okay, I had to get all that off my chest.
It is totally okay because I picked up Fire Emblem Awakening, and sadly it's still in its shrink wrap, but I picked up that and when it came out because I had heard so many good things about it, and the same with Three Houses. I've got it ready to play, just got to find time to actually play it and sit down with it, but I'd heard when Awakening came out, how great it was, plus having that option of, because I'd heard about how, like, and I'm a very big fan of like the XCOM franchise as far as like tactical games go, and it's like I know the suffering of I've put in so many hours and now I've completely wiped due to one misstep or one mistake, and I love that they made that change in the Fire Emblem franchise to have it be like, okay, you know what? Here, your people are not dead. Continue on. Enjoy the game.
It's so simple. And and here's the thing, in XCOM, that Fire Emblem, it's not like you just hit or miss. You have percentage-based hitting. And full well, much like with XCOM, if it doesn't say 100%, that miss is coming eventually. You can see 93% all you want. Eventually, you're going to have a 93% that should win you the game, or that should win you the map, and you whiff on that, and you're facing down a 32% counter, and you get blammoed in the face. It's just a math thing. It's gonna happen. It's nice to know that I have the option if I want to be like, I don't want to put my face into a grinder today, that I can turn on a mode of it and just not deal with it.
And you get to enjoy the game. You get to, sit back and be like, let me enjoy it. And then maybe, graduate to let me try it in classic style and proceed that way.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what's a recent game that I think took those kinds of ideas and ran with it really well. You mentioned it, me having played it already, was Triangle Strategy. I loved the way they handled difficulty in Triangle Strategy, which is right from the outset, you can choose the difficulty, but you can change it at any point during your playthrough. There's nothing tied to you have to play on X difficulty to get X character or ending or whatever. No, it's literally just, do you want the game to be harder for yourself? Go hard. Do you want it to be easy for yourself? Go easy. There's even a very easy. Have fun. You know what I mean? So there's that. And then what they do is they give you the ability after like the second battle, the ability to grind in like these quote mental mock battles outside of the story. But they very clearly have an intended level they want you to be at. Both because with the battle, it will literally tell you expected level X, and also because they put rubber banding on the experience. So like the less you are under an enemy's level, the more experience you get. The more you are over an enemy's level, the less experience you get. But even more than that, it's not even like specific enemies. It's the fight will be coded as the enemy's average level being X, and every action you take, whether against an enemy, on an ally, a self buff, whatever, the experience is just all going to be based on that fact. So if you go into a level 2 fight with level 30 characters, they can be self-buffing and attacking and doing whatever. They're going to get 1 XP per use. Okay? But what they do is they're basically saying, we have expectations that in this fight, you are going to be level X. And that's because they tie what skills and everything you learn to the level. So they want you to have certain things available in the toolkit. You can try over leveling, it's just not going to be efficient. You know what I mean? But one, if a unit dies in battle, literally the only penalty to you is it's harder to fight the battle with a dead person. You know, they can't take actions and they can't keep getting experience in the battle. But there's no like permanent loss. There's no permadeath. There's no crystallization. There's no none of that. If a unit dies in battle, they're back up at the end of it. Now, there are limited ways to revive them, but it's just the game is built around the idea of like, if you lose a unit, the only thing is you just lost the unit for the rest of this fight. And then you can flip the difficulty lower at any given point if you need to. So they're literally like, hey, we want to encourage you trying. And if you have to make it easier to beat it, make it a little easier. Feel free. But we're going to give you the tools to get like there. It was this idea of like, we have X intended experience, which is playing at this level on normal mode, but we're going to give you the ability to level a little further if you need to, just not too much. And we're going to give you the ability to make it easier by multiple steps. It's a simple thing. It doesn't change the intended experience. I ran through the whole game on normal mode without ever dropping it down. And there, even on normal, there were some hellacious fights. Like some enemies who were tuned to all hell, where I'm like, damn, you are putting me through the ringer. I don't even want to know what you were like on hard. And I had numerous deaths. I never felt it was unfair because the game wasn't punishing me. It was literally like, okay, how are you going to solve this? And there were a lot of fights where it's just like, okay, let me try a different strategy. What if I go around this way, take out that person? Okay, if I do this and I do this. There was one fight, if you watched my first attempt at it versus my last attempt at it, it was laughable how differently it went. Like the first attempt, I got my shit pushed inward. Okay, just got mollywopped. Because it was like I'm on the middle of a bridge and there's a group of enemies on either side of me, almost as numerous as I am on either group, trying to move inward. So I'm getting flanked and it's real bad. And like what I was trying to do is like, okay, if I split out and focus on this person, and I was like, hold on, let me retry this. What if I get all my mages and I have this ability I have this equipment that'll let this character move first. And then I have this ability that'll let this character automatically move after this person. That character has an ability that lets them give anyone else the immediate next turn. I can give them a whole bunch of gear that increases their speed so they act early, so I can do that. Okay, what if I stack up all my mages and then give this fourth mage a whole bunch of gear to crank up their speed? What if I just have them all push in on this group over here and blitz down with AoEs so that there's only like 2 people on one side left after they're all done? And then we just mop that up, and now it's all just a battle in the other direction. All I had to do was change my tactics. I lost 1 person in that fight the last time I tried it. Once I changed my approach. Like, I ran through them. All it took was me viewing it a little differently. And so they build around the idea of, like, we want you to try different things. I like that. But they also gave me the option to say, you know what? I don't like this. I'm going to put it to very easy and punch everyone in the face. And there's nothing wrong with choosing to do that. So that's my accessibility and difficulty rant for the day. I can't promise it won't come up again within like 5 minutes, but I think I've got it all out of me.
Now, if people were interested in getting into let's say the Fire Emblem franchise, where would you say, you know, and I hate to say, like, where would you say, like, to get the start? Because there's not that many options currently because, you know. Right.
So I was going to say, am I allowed to say emulate?
Yeah.
Or like, is Nintendo going to come and attack us? No. Okay. It. So here's me. I'm going to say honestly that. But here's the thing. Here's one thing that sucks. A lot of the better games, like the newer games, anything past Awakening, so Awakening, Echoes, which was a great remake of the second game in the series, Fire Emblem Gaiden, and then the Fates games, which is actually 3 different games. Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, and Fire Emblem Fates Revelations. And the way that works, I'll just tell you real quick. If you've played Smash Brothers, the character Corrin is the protagonist of that series of games. And it's essentially 2 families on opposite sides of a war, Nor and Hoshido. And they were born to one family, but raised by the other. And you end up finding out the first 6 chapters is the same in all the games. Mm-hmm. But everything after at the end of chapter 6, you have to choose. Am I going to side with my birth family, which is the kingdom of Hoshido, in which case you're following the story of Birthright? Am I going to side with the family that raised me, who I view as my brothers and sisters? That's the kingdom of Nor, and that's Fire Emblem Conquest. And then they eventually came out with a DLC alternate option, which is I'm going to walk my own path. It's like the Mary Sue, I'm going to try and get everyone under one banner thing. It's so the I don't want to have to choose option, which is Revelations. All of those, there is emulation, but 3DS emulation is not perfect. So it's not necessarily going to be easy. So for those, I would recommend, especially if you have a 3DS, with Nintendo shutting down the 3DS store, try and get your hands on a copy of any of those games. And before the eShop closes, if you get your hands on a copy of Fire Emblem Fates, either Conquest or Birthright, I recommend going on the 3DS eShop and trying to buy the other one. As far as which game in the series should you start with, I have essentially a couple different answers for that. It's funny. The 2 series I get asked the most by people, which one should you start with? Fire Emblem, because I personally know Fire Emblem so much, and then Final Fantasy, because so many people hear that these Final Fantasy games are these great, awesome RPGs, but there's so many of them. Where do I start? So I have cultivated answers for both, but in both of them, my answers are, it depends. And so it's I have a couple questions, and it's which of these do you think appeals to you the most? And so it's, if you want a game with, I think Fire Emblem 3 Houses, pretty objectively, is the best game in the series. It's got the most to it. It's got the most content. It's got the best looks. It's got the best characters. Claude is easily, he's the leader of the Golden Deer, the yellow army, the guy with the bow. He's easily my favorite character in the entire franchise because he has so much depth and nuance. At first, where a lot of characters in games like these can just be one-note tropes, and he's not just the scheming guy. He can be a little scheming, but then you come to find out he's got much bigger aspirations for the people. He genuinely wants to do good for the world. He wants to open the borders. He's why are we being xenophobic to other people? Why are we locking out others just because they look different when we have an opportunity to change things? There's so much nuance and depth to his character. He's my favorite in the whole series. And it's frankly not even close. I love 3 Houses. It was my game of last generation. Well, it was tied for my game of last generation with Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it came out first, so I'm allowed to say it's game of the generation. Easily my favorite game on the Switch, still to this day. It's just incredible. But if you want something, the thing about 3 Houses is to get the full depth of it, and something I will spoil for people right now, where I said that with Fates, you eventually got there's 2 stories where you side with either house, but there's a 3rd story where it's well, I want to work with everyone. That doesn't exist with 3 Houses. 3 Houses, you have the 3 main lords. You have your main character, the point of view character, Byleth. And you have the 3 main lords of the 3 factions, Edelgard, Claude, and Dimitri. By the halfway point, at the beginning of the game, you have to side with one of them. Mm-hmm. And then eventually things turn. At first, it's not outright hatred, but eventually you are at war with the others, and it's a war. And so there is no path where you get to work with all of them and unite the land. That doesn't exist. And so it can be a bit daunting because it gives this idea of so I'm going to have to play the game 3 times because the stories go wildly different. So I'm going to have to play the game 3 times to enjoy it all. So if you want something a little less like a little less wild, but you still want the casual option. You don't want to necessarily go with the classic difficulty. Awakening is what I always am going to recommend to start. It's a solid game. It's got great mechanics. It's good fun. There's a lot of playfulness to it, but it also does get pretty mature, not like mature in a bad way, but, like pretty complex storytelling. And it introduced the classic mode. It brings you the ability to, like, the customization with being able to pair up people and then seeing like how that changes the kids' generation is super fun. So it brings a lot of great stuff to the table. And then if you're trying to be like, okay, but I want to try like the tried and true Fire Emblem experience, like the experience that people came up playing, my honest default there would be the Game Boy Advance era. Preferably Sacred Stones. It's the easiest of the 3 Game Boy Advance ones, but it still can knock your teeth in if you don't know what you're doing. But that one gives you a little bit more flexibility, gives you a little bit more customizability. Like that one introduced the idea after like in America at least, of branching promotion paths, things like that. It's got great music. It's a beautiful looking game on the GBA. Like the sprite art's gorgeous. If you want the classic experience, go, through whatever means, hint, hint, or if you can find a cartridge, feel free, go play Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. And then if you like that, then okay, cool. Now you can check out some of the other classic games. You can check out 6 and 7 on the Game Boy Advance. You can maybe dig into the Super Nintendo era games. You could check out Path of Radiance on the GameCube, which I will tell you, whereas 3DS emulation is what it is, Path of Radiance for the GameCube and Radiant Dawn for the Wii both have perfect compatibility with Dolphin. So if you have a computer that can handle Dolphin, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just listen, I have case, disc, manual, whole thing, because I've had them for years now, obviously. Path of Radiance for the GameCube and Radiant Dawn for the Wii. Which is good, because if I didn't, trying to buy them is like trying to buy a house.
Yes.
They're literally, the 2 of them combined will run you about $600. No joke. Like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, loose, just the game will run you $200. It's just that expensive. And they haven't re-released it yet. Now, I would love if they like drop Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn on the Switch. Hell yeah, give it to me. I don't even need you to really update it. Maybe have it play in widescreen and call it a day. But I just don't know that that's going to happen. But you have that compatibility. You can check out those games. But like the litmus test for me, the 3 starting points are, if you want the most classic experience in the most accessible format, Sacred Stones, which is number 8 on the Game Boy Advance. If you want kind of that, I don't necessarily want something too heavy to dive into, but I do want casual mode. I do want a bit more options available to me. I do want some of the newer bells and whistles. Go with Awakening on the 3DS. And then if you want to just dive into the whole pie, the whole enchilada, and see what the series has, and then maybe you'll check out the other stuff later, it is all good to dive headlong into 3 houses.
That's solid representation across the board, and I love talking to somebody that has, like, with you, and just that historical background of growing up with the games and being able to talk about like all across the board, whether it's the Game Boy Advance games, the GameCube, the Wii, like everything. It's wonderful to have somebody that is not only talking about the franchise as a whole, but talking about, like, giving that good advice of, here's where you can get a good start into this game based on what you like. And just it's so wonderful.
Absolutely. I thank you for that. It's one of those things where, like, I found that it's the same thing with Final Fantasy, like I said, where I don't want to just give people an answer of, well, this one's my favorite. And I don't want to give people the answer of, well, you can do any, because just the honest truth is, if you're like asking someone the question, that's because you can't come up with a decision in the first place yourself. Maybe it's analysis, a paralysis by analysis. Maybe it's just because you don't know which one's good, which one's bad, and there's so many choices. So at that point, I was like, okay, the thing is, not everyone's coming from the same place. Let me be prepared for a few different viewpoints. Now, someone may say, I don't know, I want to go all the way back to like, what's the hardest game? And I'll be like, okay, well, that's this one. But, you know, it's just one of those situations where if I'm like, let me account for all the possibilities I could think of the average person would go with, you know?
Exactly. Now, before we jump off of the strategy games or tactical games, to talk about a different subset of games, I did want to ask a quick question about Suikoden, specifically Suikoden 2, because I know you streamed it, and I've heard, and that again, that's another game where it's like you gotta pay hundreds or even more to get a real copy of it. Like, what are your thoughts on it? Because I've never played it, but I've heard tremendously good things about that game specifically.
What are my thoughts on it? Suikoden 2, as much as I'm the Fire Emblem guy, Suikoden 2 is my individual favorite video game of all time. In streaming the whole thing through, I'm not gonna lie to you, there are two different points. One point where I almost cried, actually 3 points total. One point where I almost cried, one point where I did cry. And again, I know everything this game's going to throw at me. I played it a dozen times. It's my favorite game, but doesn't matter. There's a specific point where I'm gonna cry. And for anyone who's listening who's familiar with Suikoden, I'm not going to spoil the whole thing for people who haven't seen it, but I'm just going to say the thing that happens at Rock Axe Castle. And if you're familiar, you already know. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's enough emotional moments at the game that it is not me spoiling for you to say an emotional moment happens at Rock Axe Castle. Spoiler, emotional moments in general happen everywhere. That's just one that gets me. And then at the end, I probably would have cried again, but it became an almost, because when I got to the end of the game, I had to jump over to a retro game tournament I was taking part in. So I didn't have the option, so I had to kind of get myself in check.
Gotcha.
But Suikoden 2 is a gorgeous piece of storytelling. The game is good. It's fun. I love the 6-member party combat, which in any other JRPG would be like, what the hell do you mean? I've got 6 other party members. I've got 6 party members in attacks. But combat moves so swift, so fluid, so everything. It's just too much. Yeah. The combat is fun. The game, there's 108 recruitable characters, because the game is actually based on one of the 4 major Chinese pieces of literature, specifically the Water Margin. And in the Water Margin, there are the 108 Stars of Destiny, the 36 Stars of Heaven, and the 72 Stars of Earth. Okay, and the Stars of Destiny, that's like the star you're born under. You know, someone may be born under the Tenkai star, which is usually the star of leadership. Then there's, the star of bravery, so on and so forth. And you can usually, honestly, if you look at the series, in every game, there's always 108 stars to recruit. And the hero outside of number 3, where there was a selectable hero, was always the Tenkai star. And the Tenkai star in 3, he's kind of the guy who runs your base of operations, because there's multiple choices for who your overall, quote, hero is. There's a canon choice, but just divide this point. There's, there's characters who tend to be the character who's your chef. There's characters who tend to be the character who runs your store, all under the same star. Mm-hmm. Well, but here's the thing with Suikoden 2. So part of it is there's this connection with Suikoden 1. You were able to take your save data from Suikoden 1 and import it into Suikoden 2, and you got some benefits. The characters who returned in the second game could get a level boost. Some of them could carry over their runes, which was the magic system of the game. They could have their weapon power increased, things like that. You even end up, if you do that, able to access a whole other side quest where you essentially got to recruit the hero from the first game. It's awesome. But the game didn't need it. You don't need it. You can play Suikoden 2 entirely by itself, and it's a beautiful and powerful game. I played the first one because it sets so much up, and if you're going to play them, I totally recommend to people, play Suikoden 1 and then play Suikoden 2. Whether or not you're transferring the files or can make that work, whatever, Suikoden 1, because of how they build the experience system and things like that, it's about an 18 to 20 hour game. It's not huge, and it's good. It's not incredible. I have a soft spot for it, but it's good. It's a good RPG. But what it builds for you in the second game, the understanding of things that happen and the way they shape events is brilliant. And the thing Suikoden 2 does the best of all, the thing that I will never get over is, I argue from the bottom of my heart, Suikoden 2 has the single greatest villain of any game ever. Luca Blight. Even his name, Luca Blight. Like, they knew what they were doing. But he is the singular most evil, just dark, inhuman MF you will ever see. There's a scene, one of the first scenes, where they establish how evil he is. He just brought in his troops, raised a village, killed countless people, and there's a couple of stragglers left, and one of them is begging for her life, and he tells her, get on all fours and squeal like a pig. And you see her get down on all fours and start, well, oink, oink, oink. Is that good? And he starts laughing, like his sprite is clearly laughing, and he just walks forward and lifts his sword and shouts, die, pig, and just cuts her down.
Dang.
Like, exactly. This is the first thing you see of him. It only gets more evil from there. He genuinely has no regard for human life. And here's the thing, and what I love about him, they do try and give you this idea of, like, he was not loved a lot as a kid, but they never try and, like, justify his evil.
Mm-hmm.
They make it clear, Luca is evil. Luca was born evil. Luca is unabashedly evil. Luca cares about survival of the fittest. If you are strong, you take. And if you are weak, you give and you die. And the reason that's so important is Luca Blight is not the final boss. He's nowhere near the final boss. Because Luca sets up so much of the game's story, and he is very important for so much of it, and his boss fight sequence, which is what I have to call it, is one of the singular most epic things in any game ever. To give you an idea, I already told you, in combat, you set up a 6-person team. When you finally have your showdown with Luca Blight, you have to set up 3 different parties of 6 people. And you fight him 3 times back to back. And that by itself is still not enough to take him down. He's just the devil. Okay? I'm not going to spoil where it goes from there. It's just, that's one of the most awesome things there is. So, the thing is, though, there's other people, because this is a game of war. You represent the resistance trying to protect the United City-States of Joustin. And Luca fights for the Kingdom of Highland. Well, there's other people on the Kingdom of Highland. There's other officers. There's other people who live there. They're antagonists, but they're not villains. They're not bad guys. Mm-hmm. Luca is used to humanize all the other antagonists and really paint the picture of how gray war is. Because yes, obviously he's evil. Obviously he needs to go. Well, now he's gone. Now what? Because you know the other people around him, you've seen it firsthand, that they're morally gray. They're not all evil. But what do you do when they're on the other side of the battlefield? Suikoden, if there's one thing I can teach anyone who listens who's never heard it, Suikoden does not pull punches. It is a game about war. It is a game about loss. But it is also a game about hope. And ultimately, especially if you follow the path to the thing, right? And if you've never played before and you decide to play, I thoroughly encourage you. There are spoiler-free guides to make sure you recruit every character and you do what you need to do to get the best ending. I thoroughly encourage you to do it because it's so worth it. But it's just like, there is always hope and humanity will always overcome. Like, one of the key themes of Suikoden is fate. And is man strong enough to decide his own fate, or is his fate written for him? Fate will set in, like, the where you're supposed to come away with it is fate can set things into motion, but it is what you then do that determines from there. Fate is not the end all be all. You can rewrite your fate, right? And it goes so deep into this, and it's one of those things where it's all about the choices you make. And as you get to the end, you start to understand the truth of all these characters. And you understand them before then, but it's like as you start seeing things come together, it just hits you in such a profound way. I've never had a game truly get me in my heart the way that Suikoden 2 has. And that's why I said, like, I've played it a dozen times, and yet there are parts in the game where I'm gonna get emotional. I'm gonna start tearing up because it doesn't matter, because it just draws something out of me. Yeah, I know it's gonna happen, but it's what it draws out of me. It's Suikoden 2. I hate how difficult the most recent consoles you can access it on without paying a hojillion dollars to get a copy of any of the Suikoden games is either a PSP or a PS Vita or on the PlayStation 3.
Okay.
And you got to hook those up, get them hooked up, which, by the way, the PSN store is eventually going to close for those too. But if you hook those up, if you still got them, you can go on the PSN store. You can buy copies of Suikoden and Suikoden 2 for, I think, $8 and $10 a pop. It's still affordable, and you can enjoy them that way. Other than that, it's basically like Konami is the one who owns it, and apparently they don't like making money. Because I promise you, if you dropped a Suikoden collection on the Switch right now, if you put Suikoden 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'm not even getting into Tactics, which was on the PS2, Suikoden Tactics. I'm not getting into Tier Crease, which was on the DS, and it's kind of like a black sheep game. I'm not getting into the 100 Woven Webs of Fate, which was a PSP game. I'm not getting into any of that. Just 1 through 5. If you put them on the Switch tomorrow on a collection, and all you did was you added widescreen support and have it output in HD, okay, and you could set it for $40. Hell, you could set it for $60 and people would buy it. Because trying to buy a copy of the PS1 discs right now, you're spending $120 a piece. And you're not getting the PS2 games. And the thing is, they know how much people want it, because there was a recent Kickstarter. It became one of the single most successful Kickstarters in history. The Kickstarter for Eiyuden Chronicles. 100 Heroes. If you look it up, Eiyuden, Eiyuden Chronicle. It's a game that was made by the former Suikoden staff. They started their own new game dev company, Rabbit and Bear Studios, I believe it is, and they basically are making their own spiritual successor. Like, if you look at the photos of the game versus Suikoden, it's like, okay, it's Suikoden in everything but name. Right. The characters literally look, and the sprite art literally looks like it was like, oh, this is just like an HD 2D version of Suikoden 2. Like, it is Suikoden. They saw that people, I think it became the 3rd highest video game Kickstarter ever. When it came out, Konami saw. You don't miss that. You don't miss the spiritual successor to one of our brands that we own. Just became one of the most successful Kickstarters ever. And they've done nothing. Since that came out, the entirety of what they've done is they've put up a merch store on Konami.com, and you can buy some t-shirts that show Suikoden stuff. I promise you that's it. That is literally the only thing they've done. It's like, you guys just don't want to make money, I guess. Because I'm not even asking you to make a new game. You tell me you can't get 5 guys to and I understand gaming is more than that, but you can't get 5 guys to program a quick collection that you can drop on the various systems? You can. You're just not into that anymore. And that's the thing that sucks with Suikoden. Konami doesn't care anymore. If they did, it would be available readily on all whatever consoles. Mm-hmm. Good example of that is Sega. For as much as they've had their downfall, they know something about games preservation. Man, Sonic Origins Collection, come out this year, you can play Sonic 1, 2, and 3 on basically every like the only thing you can play Sonic or more than Sonic on as far as how many consoles you can play it on is Doom. They got Sonic collections going back to everything since after the Genesis came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like you play it on the Game Boy, play it on Game Boy Advance, even play it on Saturn, play it on the Dreamcast, play because they're like, yeah, everyone should be able to play these at all times. Konami just doesn't care. But I understand I've gone way off from whatever the hell we were talking about. Here's the important point: Suikoden 2 is a beautiful game. It really is. If you want to jump straight to it, you can. If you want to play Suikoden first, I thoroughly recommend it. But if you do have a chance, like if there's any game, even more so than Fire Emblem, if there's anything I would encourage people who like RPGs to play, Suikoden 2 is truly one of the most beautiful, and the sprite arts are beautiful and gorgeous. It's one of the most powerful and great games I've ever played. It is my favorite game of all time.
And that is absolutely saying something when after, we've had this conversation for a good chunk of time about Fire Emblem, and then to go from there to be like, and Suikoden is the best.
It is. Exactly. And I tell people that all the time. I can talk about this series. If you go on my Twitch, you'll see I play Fire Emblem all the time. I play the hell out of some Mega Man just constantly. I could tell you all types of info things. I played Mega Man X 1, 2, 3, and 4 each, probably a dozen times on stream already between them all. I used to play it daily with my youngest because he loved to watch me play it. I play Mario all the time. I love Mario. Suikoden 2 is that game. It's the game where I genuinely got excited about, the schedule finally worked out to where I'll be able to play it on stream. I genuinely got excited and happy for it because I knew I'm going back to my favorite game. And you could see like the very first stream I did of it, which it's not, showing anymore, but I can tell you now, the very first stream I did of it, I was like getting giddy in my seat and so happy from the very opening screen. It just genuinely is that good.
So now we're going to move after this wonderful, and I'm going to have to go back and listen and take notes on this. And I encourage those that are listening to the podcast when it comes out. This is going to be a good podcast to listen to about some games and game recommendations, especially with Fire Emblem. So go back and take a listen. But we're going to jump over to a whole new subset of games, which is tabletop role-playing games. Yes. And that's where we generally have our overlap on Twitter, at least probably to start with, and then from there, just mutual stuff. And I know that you're also a fellow Floridian.
Yes.
So that's another crossover there. But with tabletop role-playing games, I always love to ask, where'd you get your start? How'd you get into tabletop role-playing? What was your first game of tabletop role-playing?
Third grade, I moved from, so I'm originally from Massachusetts. Third grade, I moved from the tip of Cape Cod, a town called Chatham, to a town on about 3 and some change hours away, named Northbridge. And don't know anyone there, what have you. So I'm new to the school, make up a friend, meet some people, whatever. I get in class, and I end up meeting these two kids who became my friends basically for the remainder of my time living in Massachusetts. Josh Keller and Ryan McMurdo. Love those two. And we become friends, we're playing, and so eventually they're like, hey, you should come over one week, a couple weeks into being in school, whatever. You should come play with come hang out at my house, whatever, on the weekend. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can come play Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. I'm thinking that's like some Super Nintendo game. I don't know. Something, because I didn't know what it was. And I did, there was no one in my family who had ever done it. I never see it, whatever. So I get to his house. And so we get into the room and I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't see a TV or anything. He's like, yeah, I don't have a TV. It was like, oh, is it a different room? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, to play this Dungeons and Dragons. He goes, you don't, what? No, you don't use TV. And he pulls out a book. And I'm like, I'm very confused. And so then they started explaining. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like playing with your imagination, but with dice. And he's like, I mean, yeah, kind of, yeah. Okay, sure. I'll check it out. Whatever. And that was the day I got hooked. We was the good old, for those of you who remember this, who are old like I am, the good old Dungeons and Dragons Rules Cyclopedia. Okay, this was D&D Basic, as it was known. So I remember the book, you had like this big dragon on the front, but it wasn't like a red dragon or there was like more like a long neck up into the dragon's head facing you. It wasn't the whole body. And there was like an adventure in front of him and everything. And this was D&D Basic. So you rolled for your stats 3d6 and you're stuck with what you get for 6 straight rolls. You can assign them how you want, but you just roll 3d6 6 times and those are your stats. And then you got to decide what you're going to play. And there were, quote, 7 classes. Quote, because those 7 classes were fighter, thief, cleric, magic user. Just magic user was the name, not a wizard or sorcerer, just magic user. And then dwarf, elf, halfling. You were a human unless you took one of those 3 classes. And those 3 classes were basically just variant fighters. Like the elf, for instance, was basically a fighter mage. Like he was like, you can wield swords and stuff like the fighter and use armor like the fighter, but you can also cast magic missile once per day. But my first character, like the first thing I was considering doing was being an elf because like, oh, you could use magic and use weapons and everything. And then I looked at I was like, okay, can I look at the pages? And I looked and I was like, wait, what's this? Here's the other thing. The experience amounts you needed to level up and things like that were different between the different classes. And so you needed 4,000 experience to get to level 2 as an elf. As a thief, 1,200. Okay. Wait, I can backstab and I can sneak and look at all these cool things I can do. There's all these tables of things that thieves can do. And that's when I ended up falling in love with thief and rogue type characters. And really, I say that, and I do still have a soft spot in my heart for rogues. But like, what it is what it really that I fell in love with was characters that did things beyond combat. Like, I love combat, but I like doing things outside of combat. I've always been the type of guy who like tried to come up with creative solutions to things. Like, what's a solution I can try and drop that will just lead? Ultimately, my goal is to have the DM look at me and go, how did you come up with that? Okay, sure, let's try it. But yeah, like that's the goal. And so if you give me a bunch of tools I can use outside of combat, then hell yeah, I'm going to use those tools outside of combat. And so that's when I ended up falling in love with Thieves and Rogues because they had a whole bunch, like you could sneak and you could pick locks and things like that. And that's also where the name Anorian was born, where I just started like making noises in my mouth because we had these other cool characters at the table like Hector, the great cleric healer, and then Idokea, the fighter. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I got to come up with a cool name. And I came up, I started making sounds like, Anorian. That's it. And then it was good, right? It wasn't until later that I realized that Idokea was just, I don't care. And they just warped the sounds a little bit. I was like, man, you made me go through that work. The reason I found out it was that is because Idokea had a brother named I Don't Wanna. I'm not even kidding about that. I wish that was just for a punchline. We were in the 3rd grade. I promise you it was real. But it was good, it was fun times. It was, like I said, it was D&D Basic, so it was things like, I ended up getting a magic sword. It was +1 against everything, +3 against undead. And that was awesome. And then eventually I got the Flame Tongue. Was given that weapon. And it was +1 against everything, +2 against creatures that heal and regenerate, like trolls. +3 against undead, +4 against cold creatures. oh man, there's a +4. That's incredible. Yeah, things are a little different compared to that. And Thaco. I'm always going to have a soft spot in my heart for Thaco, but like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm very good on ever going back and having to parse that out again. I'm so good. It's a lot easier to just be like, what's your AC? 17. Okay, I rolled a 17. Okay, you hit.
Yep. That was my my issue was when I got started with D&D was I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to tell you what I rolled, and then you have to tell me, because I cannot wrap my head around Thaco.
Yeah, but what's your armor class? -3. Oh, that's really good. What do you mean that's really good? What? Yeah. So all that, but it's just, you know, I absolutely love, you know, TTRPGs, but that's where I got my start. And then, you know, from there I became like, I got deeper into Dungeons & Dragons. I eventually ended up getting my own books, but by the time I got my own books, the 3rd edition had already come out. So my mom, because I told my mom I want to get Dungeons & Dragons books, and she went to, there's a bookstore in town and had them order them for me. But by the time, you know, but at that point he's like, oh, he told her, he's like, oh, there's a new edition out. It's like, oh, what? What do you mean? So when he's thinking like books, you have 1st edition, 2nd editions, but no, it was 3rd edition.
Right.
And so I ended up being the one who brought that to our friend group and had us learn about all that. But then, you know, that brought the idea of like, I got into, for those of you who remember, again, aging myself here, back in the 90s when you had the heyday of various card games, there was like card games for all different properties, and, you know, collectible games and minis games and things like that. You know, you had your Magic the Gathering, you had Pokemon, you had Yu-Gi-Oh, sure, but then you also had, you know, Legend of the Five Rings, and you had the Lord of the Rings card game and all this stuff.
Yep.
So they had this magazine, Pojo's Unofficial. Okay. And that was the guy, like that was the magazine you had that was all types of stuff for card games and collectible mini games like Warhammer, HeroClix, or Mage Knight. For those of you who remember that, I still have all my Mage Knight figures, by the way, in a little container in my closet, which was like HeroClix before HeroClix and fantasy based. But also it started to get me into other TTRPGs. Like one of the ones that I found was the Marvel Universe role-playing game, which is, I find it hilarious. I mention it now. You know, we have another Marvel game coming out this year. But it was like, you know, when I first looked into it, I was like, oh, sweet, playing Marvel characters and superheroes. All right, cool. What would the stats roll? Like, what kind of number? What do you roll and stuff? Oh, there's no rolling. There's no dice. You just have stones. You have stones for energy, stones for health. You can put however many stones into a skill based on your own mastery of it that you do with character creation. And like, it's all about effort. There was no random chance involved. You either put enough effort or you didn't. And it's like, okay, cool. And I love that because that kind of playing different TTRPGs than D&D has made me a better player and DM. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff I'm working on, because I'm working on a few things that I'd like to put out as supplements and, you know, classes and things like that before the end of the year. It's made me a better game dev as well, because it makes me look at things through a different lens. And that was the first game that really made me like, oh, this is wildly different. And I, you know, learned something from there. And like, even the idea of like the rule of cool, as it's known, like, just coolness always provides what's going to be the most fun at the table. Well, it even codified that into the rules, that Marvel Universe game. Because I remember one of the things was the absolute highest any stat can be at all, period, under any circumstances, is 10. Flatly 10. Nothing can go above 10. 10 is the level of the gods. 10 is literally the greatest people of any given level. And then you go read the stat block for Hulk, and it's like, oh, by the way, Hulk can actually supersede 10 strength because he's the Hulk. And it's like, okay, shit. I can't even be mad at it. But it's made sense. If you know about comics, you know the Hulk is that dude. You know, like, the Marvel movies did not do a good job of showing off. Thanos in the comics is like that one comic strip, like the hand-drawn meme comic strip that people show around, of a guy who walks around with a shirt that says "no fear," and someone asks a question and it says "one fear." Like, Thanos is that guy, but it's like "no fear." What about the Hulk? One fear. He specifically goes out of his way to plan, how do I get that thing to not interfere with my plans? So it makes sense that there's a rule that's like, this is how strong everyone is, except that guy. You know, and it's cool. Things like that. It helped really grow. And so then, you know, I got into forum role plays, especially in high school, play by post and things like that. The biggest ones I were in were Heroes of Ivalice and Sim RTK, which were based on Final Fantasy Tactics and Romance of the Three Kingdoms, respectively. But I did a plenty of different ones and all that. And then, now I'm doing, shows with other people and guest spots and working with folks in the space. And I'm hoping before the end of the year, I have 2 of my own shows I want to cast and put together and produce and put out. Though the one thing there is, it's all going to be about getting sponsorship and such lined up, because I'm going to want to pay the people involved.
Right.
I want to have people's time be compensated. But yeah, I have some stuff I want to put out there. And so, I'm getting into all that. And I've gotten invited into some really cool and really, really fun opportunities, and just been really happy that people apparently are cool with me.
That's always a nice feeling, being like, oh, you like me. You want me to do stuff with you. That's cool.
Yup. Yeah, the one that really just threw me for a loop was like, I mentioned it beforehand, but that bronze girl, Jasmine Bular, who is a lovely soul, can I just say? She is every bit, and mind you, I have an encounter with her from a few years back where it ended up being like, I sent her an email, and like, on reflection, it was kind of a wonky title that I put, and so I get why she didn't see it right away. But I was asking her, like, this was the first year of the pandemic. I was going to do an anniversary stream as my big focus, but 2 of my regulars, this was before we knew anything about it. This was in like April of 2020, before we knew, like, oh, good, no one's ever going to do right by things, so it's just going to be around forever.
Right.
So when we thought it was just going to be like a couple of weeks to a couple of months, it's like, oh, okay. So what we're going to do here is, 2 of my regulars, their son is turning 5. I'm going to throw him a birthday party stream. We're going to play the games he wants me to play. I'm going to get all the people I can in here to sing happy birthday. I'm going to do happy birthday. I emailed some various YouTubers and streamers to see if I could get them to make a video or drop in or something. And she was one of the ones I reached out to. And only one person actually did respond and sent me a video for free without charging, which was awesome. One other person responded other than her, and they asked for like $250, which, like, I get it. Like, they gave a flat rate. I'm not going to be upset that they gave a rate, but it was one of those things where, like, I explained, like, hey, it's for a kid's birthday who's in my community. I want to do something special, And I was like, in my head, I was like, I mean, I don't have the funds for that. But I don't know. To me, it's like, I probably would have just given it, and the fact that another person did. But I'm not upset because the person just gave their base rate to do a video.
Yeah.
Like, how are they to know that it's really as altruistic as I say? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Having done this long enough, I don't take it as an anger thing. But whatever. But Jasmine didn't reach out or didn't respond, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then like 2 days after it happened, she emails me, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I missed this, just because the title I didn't properly look, and I was just going back and clearing out my emails, and once I read this, I'm so sorry. And it was like, oh, you know what, it's on me. I wasn't even thinking about the title when I said it. my bad. And she was just, it was really, really nice that she took the time. She could have just deleted it and let it go into the ether, but she took the time out of her day to make sure, like, she apologized for missing an email off of a title that I effed up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So she's just proven to me long ago she's a good person. And then, we're talking on the timeline a bit, and she's like, yeah, we should totally have you on the she has a long-running TTRPG show that's going into episode 40, I believe, this week, of the week of us talking, called Shakar, an excellent show. If you like TTRPG APs, like actual plays, go watch Shakar. I promise you, it's wonderful. It's literally one of the best. And a good part of that is Jasmine is quite literally one of the greatest storytellers I've ever seen. She's just a master of her craft. And it genuinely bugs me that when people talk about the great DMs in our community, and they talk about the Matt Mercers and the Abria Iyengars and the Brennan Lee Mulligans of the community, that Jasmine's not mentioned right there with them. She's that good. I'm not just saying that because I got to do anything with her. I've long felt that, to be clear. But she was like, yeah, we should totally have you on the show one of these days. So I'm sorry, come again for Big Fudge? Then I DM'd her, and I was like, hey, listen, I don't know if you were just kind of saying that for the timeline, but, if you ever want me, I will not hesitate to jump in. She's like, yeah, totally. We actually have an opening at such and such time. We can get you on. I was like, what? So yeah, no, we arranged it. I got to do a couple weeks with them. It was phenomenal. She is genuinely excellent. And the whole cast, really. It's Gabe James Games, who I've known for years also. And he was kind of my doorway in to the TTRPG community. Like, it's from following him that I ended up following a whole bunch of people years ago, because he was this is before he kind of took off, but he was putting out an audition for the visual novel game he was creating at the time, Hidden Treasures, and I auditioned for it. And I knew there was something to this. I knew this cat had something special about him. And so even after getting rejected, I kept following him, and I reached out and tried to get some advice from him. And I ended up finding out I almost was selected for one role, but the group that was deciding on who it would be decided on a different voice, and it's like, okay, whatever. But he gave me some positive feedback on a couple of things, and and it was really nice. And I kept, I've told him, part of my continuing to go into voice acting and whatnot, I credit to you. A big part of it. And so we ended up becoming friends, so I got to play with him. Persephoros, who is my best friend, is in it. She's wonderful. Got to play with her. Xander Genre, who I've met in person from a trip out in LA, a great human being. He's excellent, and he's in it. And then Lord Balvin, who's literally one of the funniest human beings alive. And I've told him as much to his face. That dude will have you on your back laughing. He has a knack for understanding comedic timing. I consider myself funny. I wish I was as funny as this dude. One of the best moments of the time I was there, one of the funniest jokes he told was literally just him screaming. That's it, just screaming. It's like a character popped up in front of him, and because of how the character was described, he just was staring for a moment and just unleashed this scream that you could tell it was just from the heart. It was just ah! And it was just so real. It was a beautiful thing. That was one of the most fun things I've gotten to do. I did voice acting for Dimension 20, which was, again, super fun, super great people. Orion D. Black is an amazing creative director. They are so much the better for having them. And then most recently, I was on the Mixed Bag RP show, which they're also great, just very different tone. I guested with them for 2 weeks, a show called Identity Reborn. It's being DM'd by my friend Jonathan Braceras. And the idea there is, unlike, say, Shakar, which is, it's got its funny moments, it's got its humorous moments, it's got its lighthearted moments, but it's a very serious tale told in the unique world that Jasmine has created and what have you. Identity Reborn is an isekai. It's basically Sword Art Online. Like it's got serious moments. On the second episode there, it ended with like a real punch to the gut on one of the characters and what have you. But it's, like the concept is people trapped in a video game. You know what I mean? But as a result, I got to go with a very, very different direction with my character. And by very different direction, I mean I created the single most extra human being alive. Just he plays in character. And so he calls himself the hero of light. And it's a whole thing. Like everything was these overblown gestures. It was super fun to just be like, I'm only going to be here for a couple episodes, so I'm going to enjoy this. It's cool that I've gotten to have like such wildly different experiences and all of them good. So
now,
that's all.
Out of curiosity, because it's been a while since I've talked to somebody that's been a part of different like streaming games, actual play games on Twitch or on however it's presented. How do you feel? Because I've primarily played like at a table with people that I know. How do you feel? Like, how different does it become? Like, not only like with the character that you create, but with the storytelling. Like, how does it get? Because there's clearly you clearly have like some shows have the 4 episode or 5 episode, and that's that. Like, is it? And I'm not trying to say like railroaded, but you're given the direction. How much direction do you have at like the start of a show or of a project of like telling people or telling the cast or the players like, hey, this is what I'd like to have in the game versus like, here's the story and let's hit these like beats or something
Right.
along those lines.
Like, I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I get what so just to make sure, you're talking like, obviously in like a game I'm doing the whole game of, I'm going to have some build into the storyline, right? Like, yeah. I'm going to, as a player, if I'm there from the inception of the story, I'm going to work with the DM and we're going to craft a story that I know they're going to work on and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
But like coming on as a guest for, say, 2 episodes, 3 episodes, 4 episodes of a show that's been going for, 50, 60, 70 episodes, like I can only do but so much there. And so what it basically becomes is personally, to be as far as like what I think is good, I can tell you what I've experienced and what I genuinely see things as being. Now, granted, obviously I can't speak for every time that it happens, but I just know what it's happened with for me, right? So in my experience, if we're talking about, say, Shakar or Identity Reborn, there's a both ends agreement of, I know I'm going to be here for X number of episodes, so I'm going to come at you with some character ideas that I think could be fun, either to just slot in real quick, they do their thing, and then they can be utilized to move the story or whatever, or character ideas that they maybe play on something of another character in the party or something like that. With Shakar, I built my character as like connected to Persephorod's character. So with me getting introduced, like the idea was I'm connected to her. It could help reveal some of her backstory. It could give her a little bit more characterization via my being characterized. And otherwise I can just be there to kind of supplement. Whereas with Identity Reborn, I didn't connect to any of the characters. I just was like, hey, listen, you gave me the story breakdown. What if I make my character be like this? And it's like, all right. And I gave the pitch of, I'd like to do this. And I was told, you know what? That's actually perfect. I'll actually spoil it for people because if you decide to go watch Identity Reborn, which you totally should, I believe they upload the episodes to YouTube. But one of the characters in the party kind of did, not as far as I did, but kind of did the role-playing around with their character thing, especially when talking to NPCs who now seem to have a bit of humanity added to them. But in a previous episode, they had gone through a very traumatic experience. So you could see that like that life was stolen out of them. You know what I mean? Like their whole thing was like, oh my God, they had gone through that. And it's like, why am I going to sit here and play games? This is serious. People are dying. And so it worked out perfect that that was my idea, because now it's like, okay, this is great. Now I'm coming in and I kind of sit there and reignite the flame of, no, it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be who you are, even in the darkness here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that worked out great there. With Shakar, I was like, listen, I got like 3 different ideas of what I could do. You tell me what you think would work. And originally, none of them were connected to Steffi's character. It was just an idea of, I was like, you know, Jasmine, I know you're working on some stuff. So here's like a base idea for a character. I figure since I'm only going to be there for a couple of episodes, you know, do you think you could work with any of these in a way that will progress the story? Or is that your goal, or what's going on? And then eventually it was like that light bulb moment. And I called Steffi and I was like, listen, hey, here's a hypothetical. And she was like, what's going on? I was like, what would you say if my character, I was like, I haven't run this by Jasmine yet. I wanted to run it by you before I pitched it to her. What if our characters have a past? Like, what if we have like a romance? And mind you, I will say romance in TTRPGs can be done. There needs to be a mutual understanding. There needs to be a mutual respect. You know what I mean? Things like that. But in this case, with me, I don't really do TTRPG romance. In fact, this was like the first one I had ever done, but Sephi is my best friend. So I trusted her implicitly.
Mm-hmm.
So I know like I can go to a certain level and I know she'll follow me there. But the flip side is I also know where the wall is and I know she knows where the wall is. And like we can make our whole thing, like our characters have a connected past and there was clearly something there. There's clearly kind of still something there, but you know, for XYZ reasons, it's not still going, whatever it may be. And so we knew, boom. So as soon as she was on board, hit up Jasmine. Okay, what about if I did this, this, this? And by the way, what about if me and Steffi were connecting this way and we're like such and such? And all of a sudden she was like, boom, I love it. Yes, that's it. And so it was just this idea of, at first it was like, okay, is there anything I could do that'll help? And then eventually I found like the right path we're going to take.
Right.
So ultimately, I guess it's like, it comes down to, and those were just a couple examples. Otherwise, like I've been guesting on things before. And again, what I found is like, it's a bit of a back and forth. Me as a player, I'm going to try and come up with a character that I think will be fun and, you know, good to slide into the party and to be a part of things, but also that I think will fit what the DM can use in some way. And usually I'll come up with a couple ideas. Like, okay, which one of these do you think will work best? You know, and which one of these do you think will best be able to allow you to do something, either to progress the game or to provide a new story beat or whatever it may be. And then flip side, the DM is going to work with me and be like, okay, well, maybe they'll give me some information. Like, okay, I want to try and see about maybe introducing this, or we can tie this in or whatever. Like there's some back and forth there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I found ultimately is like, as long as I'm coming in with a proper scope of where I'm supposed to be, like I can't give you a breakdown of a character that's got 50 pages of backstory and is going to take, you know, 2.5 months to explore their whole tragic past. I got 2 episodes.
Right.
So I can even have some depth and nuance, but like stuff I can show in that time period. Go. You know, as long as I'm coming with the right scope, they're going to work with me. And then they're going to make sure that I get featured without necessarily completely overshadowing everything.
Right, right.
Okay. And, you know, when it works great, when it works out its best, it works out its best. There was a bunch of people, you know, it made me really, really happy when there was a bunch of people where when I guested on the show that were like really enjoying it. We had a really, really powerful moment that a bunch of folks, like there was just dying watching. It was great. And then on the actual, like the YouTube videos, on the comments and such, you saw multiple people saying like, this Julian character is great. I got to see more of them. can we maybe have a spin-off or something? And I was like, that's which I felt great about. And mind you, I'm not putting pressure on anyone to get back in Chicago. What I mean is, what makes me feel great there is I know me and Jasmine there, by definition, I made something that helped enhance her world, and she helped make sure that I was able to do that. Like, she helped set the stage. Without her setting me up, I'm not able to do that either.
Right.
So it was just an excellent, like, she's an excellent storyteller, and it helped everything else slide in from there.
Okay. Now, for your gaming now, are you still particularly like D&D oriented? Are you branching out into the like different game systems and different game styles?
Yes.
Do you have favorites? I guess.
So here's where no. I was saying yes because it's kind of both. I do still love D&D. I do. It's a system I've grown up with. It's a system I've grown accustomed to. It's a system that's truly connected with me. But the flip side is like, I also don't like. I'm not beholden to D&D.
Right.
Like, a friend of mine was like, I got to get you in on a Blades in the Dark playtest. And I was like, heck yeah, sure, do that. I recently got sent the Power Rangers role-playing game system by Renegade Games. I got to play in a charity one-shot with that recently. Super fun. The system's really, really cool. It's not difficult. Like, literally, I was able to help someone who had a whole issue and was not able to make their character because they were kind of pulled in last second. Craft a character as far as like me asking, okay, which color ranger do you want to be? Okay, cool. How do you envision your character being from the following archetypes that I'm going to say as like their personality? Are they quirky? Are they comedic? Are they tragic? Are they the rebel? Okay, cool. And going down the line, I was able to get their character up and running, like everything written down that they needed in about 20 minutes. Which comparatively, D&D characters can take a minute to roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was very simple stuff. It's not too streamlined. Like, there's still plenty to it. There's still plenty of crunch there, but it's streamlined enough that it's easy to pick up and run with. And then I'm actually holding in my hand right now, funny enough, a little wooden dowel that got sent to me by my buddy Nick, aka Scry Society. And he runs every single month at the end of the month a charity game. And in this last October, I was brought on to raise money with them, and we played a game of Kids on Brooms. And we ended up raising $700 for the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition, which I'm really, really proud of, in one night. But we ended up playing, like I said, Kids on Brooms. The kids on whatever system, like kids doing stuff is what I like to call it, because there's kids on bikes, kids on brooms. I think there's kids with capes and kids in space are coming out, like stuff like that. But they all share one kind of core DNA.
Yeah.
It's just different varieties. It's, again, a simple system. It's not a difficult system, but there's a lot to it. I love all these different games. I love trying new things. I really want to try the Marvel Multiverse system this year, for sure. I backed the Avatar RPG. I thoroughly want to play a game of that before the end of the year. I backed into the Motherlands. I thoroughly want to play a game of that with some of my friends before the end of the year, whether or not it's streamed. But I do still love D&D. And I know D&D, and there's always going to be a place for D&D in my heart. But, like, I like experiencing different things. I like learning new systems. And again, it kind of all boils down to, sometimes I like to take those systems and just run and like, okay, well, how can I use it over here? How can I use it this way? And it kind of makes me a better player and a better DM and all that.
And as you said at the beginning, a better game dev for the stuff that you're working on that you're hoping to release, sometime this year as well.
Yes, absolutely. It gives me different ideas of things, because sometimes it's just the way something is phrased, and the way something is presented. It's like, wait, hold on. Okay, I see how that works. Well, how can I transliterate that over here? Oh, okay. What if I do this? And it just helps a lot.
For people that maybe haven't gotten into tabletop role-playing games, and by this point, if you're listening, you definitely have a lot of options to go with
To say the
for
least.
that Josh has put out there. But if you're somebody comes up to you, hey, I want to get into TTRPGs, point me in a direction, where would you point them? As far as would you put them down the Dungeons and Dragons? Would you say hey, check out this actual play and get a feel for it there? Where would you lead them?
Okay, so as far as the idea of not necessarily a system to start, but how do you start doing it? My recommendation would be, first I would say, hey, are you able or willing to watch something? And even then, I wouldn't actually necessarily throw them into the deep end of a whole actual play. My honest to God recommendation of what I would do, a couple years ago for Red Nose Day, Stephen Colbert and Matthew Mercer sat down. Matthew Mercer, for those who don't know, he is the DM for pretty inarguably the world's biggest actual play, Critical Role. They sat down together for Red Nose Day to raise the thing that they did to raise money, and they did a little one shot where it was just Steven by himself with Matt DMing him in 5th edition. The whole video is right around an hour. And in that video, both of them are so good that it's I've joked before, I was it may set an unfair expectation, but both of them are so good. It gives you all the ideas you need as far as interacting in ways that aren't just combat, what combat looks like. Oh, no, you want to roll this die, and then you want to add that to it. Okay, it's like this. You get a very simple 1 hour preview of what does the actual flow of the game look like. Okay, does this sound like something you're down to try? Okay, cool. Now let me point you in the direction of some actual plays. Maybe you want to just see about playing. There's a lot of free resources out there that you can look either for Dungeons & Dragons or for a different system. Here's a couple of systems you can look into. I've often recommended to people, just a couple off the top of my head, my friend Eldritch Crow has created their own system called Ether. I believe it's $5 for a copy on itch.io. And it's a great system. They provided me a full copy to and they basically said, listen, I'm not asking for anything other than you can tell me what you think. You can put it on your stream. You can talk about it on Twitter. You can do whatever you like. I'm giving it to you and you do whatever you want with it. And I ended up reading through it and giving it a whole look and really breaking it down. And it's a whole system that you can play with a deck of cards, just a standard deck of cards. And it's super good. It's very fun. $5. If D&D can cost some money to get into. For $5, you can get into Ether. If you do want to get into D&D, as far as things you need, if you look, their starter kit is one thing, but I would actually recommend the Essentials kit. You can generally, find it on sale somewhere for anywhere between $12 to $17. It's going to give you a whole adventure. It's going to give you a lot of the tools you need to where you can go ahead. And then there's going to be, stuff online as far as you can find the basic class stuff from the player's handbook. In most places, you can go to D&D Beyond and use that for your character sheets, and it will fill in a bunch of the options even for free, so you can kind of make your characters easy enough. That's the cheapest way to get into that, and then if you're down with it, you can buy some more stuff, like the Player's Handbook or any supplementary things. Another game that if maybe you're looking for something a little more simple, a little easier, and with a little bit more lighthearted of a focus, Ryutama is another game I love to recommend. That right there you can find for about $10 online. Ryuutama. And the best way I can describe it quite literally is, what if Studio Ghibli made an RPG? It's literally written out as like this sort of what if you had a slice of life anime in RPG form. Now it does have rules for combat. It does have things like that, just like in Princess Mononoke, people had to throw down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's not necessarily the focus. It's a thing, and you can do it, but the focus is more just on the characters and on the growth. That's why classes are literally things like farmer, sailor, things like that, merchant. And so your abilities by and large come from that. And it gives you a little bit of a different lens. And so those are three different options you can take right now. Any given one of them, you're under $20 to get into it. And it's going to give you all the tools you need. And then, there's plenty of online dice rollers. Be careful before you start buying dice. I'm not talking about quality warning or anything. I just mean it is a slippery slope. It's like starting to buy game collectibles.
Yes.
Like I've got this whole, like you think you're just buying a complete in-box copy of Donkey Kong Country because that was your favorite game on the Super Nintendo. And then before you know it, you look over on your shelf and you've got 750 in-box copies of various games, and you've spent several $1,000s to get there. Dice is the same slippery slope, mind you, before anyone's like, oh, so you have that? I don't. And that's because I don't buy complete in-box copies of games, because I know the slope I'm going down, because I like collecting things. I'm bad enough with pops as it is. But dice are on that slippery slope. You'll get one set and you're like, but is one set enough? And then you'll see a really cool set and you're like, but I don't have any in that color. And then you'll be like, ooh, metal dice. Gotta get me some of those.
Yep. And
before you know it, you have a mountain of dice.
Yes. Indeed.
Now, in my case, I at least can defend myself by saying I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I've gotten them into Dungeons and Dragons and have started playing with them, and they, so now I have the excuse of, well, I need all these dice because all three of us are playing.
Exactly, because you can't touch other people's dice. That's
exactly. So if you have that excuse, go for it. But if you don't, just it's it's the same thing as I would say of like, don't do drugs. Don't do dice.
Awesome. And I'm going to make sure that all of your suggestions in the links in our show notes, I'll make sure to have links to locate the suggestions that Josh put out there, so that way you can click on them and go check them out, because I've heard good things, especially about Ryutama. And then I'm going to have to check out the other one, Ether. Because that sounded really cool, and I've got $5 isn't bad.
Yeah, it's really easy to get into, real cheap. One other one I forgot I will recommend that's way in left field compared to the others, but Lancer. If you're not afraid of crunchy mechanics, if you're the type of person who's like, ooh, I like RPGs with a lot of knobs I can fiddle-faddle with, with a bunch of different stats and numerics to track and things like that. If that doesn't scare you away, Lancer is giant robots. And there's a bunch of different giant robots. And it's fun playing in giant robots and destroying other giant robots.
Indeed. I have fond memories of Battletech back in college. And it's like...
Ooh.
I like that. Like, let me figure out what kind of weapons I'm going to have on my little, mech and roam around the countryside.
Right.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, what can people expect from you this year, whether it's, shows, projects, finding you out there in the world of like the TTRPG space? Of course, I mean, we're recording April and this episode comes out at the end of June, so there might be some gaps or whatnot, but anything lined up at this point, or you just check out what you're doing on Twitch and Twitter for updates?
Yeah, so Twitch and Twitter is going to be the easiest focus. You can find me on Twitter. I mean, I know you said you put links, but twitter.com/AnoriandGD, ANORIAND GD for Game Dad. You can find me on twitch.tv/Anoriand. Especially on Twitter, I'm funny sometimes. That's what I say all the time. And a bunch of people yell at me to stop being so self-deprecating. But no, yeah, that's the easiest way to follow on me. Like I said, I do have plans before year's end to put out 2 different shows, actually. As far as anything beyond that, I can't really say it yet, but I do have a game that I was on that we are working on some stuff about potentially getting me to come back for another guest role. So that was fun. That'll be fun. And I'm seeing beyond that, you know, and I'm in talks with a couple other people. Nothing else fully decided on yet,
Right.
as far as when it's going to go down and how. But you will hopefully be seeing me around in a couple other games and such. Beyond that, before the end of the year, I know. So I recently actually, this past week, as of us talking, celebrated, you know, my 3-year streaming anniversary, which was fun, and we hit every donation milestone that we had. So I'm going to be playing, amongst other things, like by the time this is aired, I'm sure it'll all be done. But you know, I end up having to play Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge for the Super Nintendo, which is just, you know, it's something. Then I have to play a full playthrough of Final Fantasy II. I have to play a full playthrough of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, fully chaos randomized. But then beyond that, looking into this year, I know we're going to be checking out there's going to be a sequel to Fire Emblem Warriors, which is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which is 3 Hopes, you can probably gather, is set in like the same chronology as 3 Houses. I'll definitely be playing that on stream. I'm probably going to be checking out Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp on stream. Ayuden Chronicles Rising is supposed to come out, like that game I told you with the big Kickstarter. That's like the Suikoden spiritual successor. Before that one comes out, they are coming out with a side-scrolling platformer action RPG kind of spin-off game called Ayuden Chronicles Rising. That's going to do like some story setting for the world. That's coming out this year. I do plan on streaming that. And other than that, you know, just kind of whatever. This is why I'm a variety streamer. I'll come up with some ideas in advance where like I'm going to stream this. But beyond that, it's just a thing of like, I'm not going to lock myself in anything. And I'm also looking to revive my YouTube channel. Unless I failed miserably, by the time this episode goes up, I'll be back to regularly posting content. Namely, I'd like to be having multiple weekly uploads of like Let's Plays and just stuff like that, because it'll allow me to play some of the games I want to play that I don't necessarily have time for on stream to share those. But also some more long form stuff, maybe reviews, things like that should also be up there. Just not necessarily multiple times a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I'll be looking to do that. And that you can find me at, funny enough, it's the only site where I managed to get the proper placard for it. So you can find me at youtube.com/GameDad.
Nice.
Because I am the Game Dad. So, yeah, you can find me there. There is still some bunch of stuff from before either way, but that's gonna, you know, like I said, by the time this goes live, should be back to regularly posting content there. So that'll be nice.
Awesome. And I'll have all the links in the show notes, Facebook page, website. So that way, if you're listening and you can be, if you're listening and you're interested, just click on them. Make sure to, you know, hit the follow or the subscribe button or whatever the site requires or, you know, asks you to do, because there's a lot of them. Just do it.
Smash that like button, ring that bell, whatever it is. You know,
exactly. But Josh, I want to say thank you for taking the time to drop a lot of knowledge. It's definitely going to be an episode that when I'm going to be going back and editing it, I'm going to be taking some notes, because I've got a lot of curiosity now of stuff that I want to look into, and I have you to thank for it. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I like I said, I love the ability to just talk to people. I don't get a lot of thoughts about that, so a chance for that. So it's just always nice. So thank you for having me on here.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.